So, this is the desperate battle between the Cherokees and the Wacos. During the year 1829, the Cherokees, who had crossed the Red River from the Cherokee Nation into Texas, determined to remain in that portion of the state until they could make a crop and then move to a more suitable location the next spring. They settled into two villages, a short distance apart, planted their crops, and everything was going on prosperously when a body of Wacos, who were on a robbing excursion, discovered the new settlement and also noticed the fact that there was a large number of fine horses corralled in the vicinity. They determined to appropriate these fine horses for their own use and their own benefit, and they therefore concealed themselves in this vicinity until night, when they slipped up and succeeded in stealing the whole drove. As the Cherokees could well not leave their crops, and the Wacos besides had carried off their best horses, they thought best to postpone following the thieves to a more favorable opportunity. It was resolved in council, however, that as soon as their crops were laid by, they would visit their red brethren, recapture the stolen horses, and inflict such punishment on the Wacos as would teach them a lesson they would not soon forget. Accordingly, in April 1829, 55 well-armed Cherokees left on foot to visit and to punish the Wacos, whose principal village was at the place where the city of Waco is now situated. Close by their village, they had built kind of a fortification by scooping out the ground and raising a circular embankment around the depression that was thus formed. The remains of this fortress were still visible a few years since on the outskirts of the city of Waco. The Cherokees came to the Brazos River about 40 miles above the Waco village. Finding no signs of the enemy at that point, they continued on down the river until they discovered that they were in close proximity to the village. They then concealed themselves in the brush until night and sent out scouts to ascertain its exact position. About daybreak, the spies came back, having obtained the desired information, and the Cherokee told his men that the time had come to wreak their vengeance upon the thieving Wacos. In order to take them by surprise, the Cherokee chief led his men quietly and cautiously down the bank of the river to a point about 400 yards from the village. This was done a little before daylight, when the Wacos were asleep, and the Cherokees were thus enabled to approach them very nearly and without being discovered. Here, they halted until daylight. As soon as it was light enough to see distinctly, the Cherokees moved forward as noiselessly as possible, each one with his rifle in hand. But one of the Waco warriors, it seems, was an early riser, and while in the act of building his campfire, his keen Indian ear detected the sound of approaching footsteps. Raising to look, he discovered the Cherokees advancing within rifle shot of the village. He gave one loud, shrill yell, which brought every Waco to his feet and ready for action. At this juncture, the Cherokees fired a volley into their midst, which lay many a Waco on the ground. The Wacos, however, outnumbered greatly the Cherokees, and for some time they made a stubborn resistance. The fight lasted for several hours without intermission. At length, however, the Wacos, finding that their bows and arrows availed but little against the deadly rifles of the Cherokees, and that a considerable number of their warriors having already fallen, they retreated to their fortress before mentioned, where they had a great advantage over their assailants. The Wacos could lie down behind the embankment and shoot their arrows at the Cherokees without being exposed to the fire of the Cherokees' rifles. The Cherokees held a council of war as to what should be done. One proposition was to strip themselves naked, rush into the fort, discharge their guns, and then, with their tomahawks in hand, to kill every man, woman, and you know what, in the village. The Cherokee brave who made this proposition in order to incite his comrades did actually himself strip naked and fasten several belts he had found in the Waco village around his body. He then boldly charged up to the breastworks surrounding the fortress, sprang on top, and cursed the Wacos for being a set of cowardly thieves. After performing this act of bravado, he jumped down and returned unhurt to his comrades amid a shower of arrows that were being hurled at him. Just as the Cherokee had brought their council to a close, they heard the clattering of horses' feet on the opposite side of the river, and to their astonishment, they discovered a large body of mounted Indians rapidly approaching. at the commencement of the fight, had dispatched a runner to the camp of the Tehuacanas, who were their allies, to tell them to come as speedily as possible to their assistance. The Tewacanas promptly responded to the call and dispatched 200 warriors to the assistance of their allies. These were the Indians the Cherokees saw approaching. The Wacos, now being reinforced by these 200 Tewakana warriors, fresh and ready for the fray, changed the aspect of the affairs considerably. And as there was no possibility of fighting with any hopes of success against the combined forces of the Wacos and Tewacanas, there was no alternative left to the Cherokees but to retreat. The Tewacanas immediately crossed the river and took up their position in some post oak timber, where they kept up a continuous yelling, but prudently did not venture within range of the Cherokee rifles. Just before they had taken position in the post oaks, they had captured a young Cherokee lad about 12 years old and killed him. They then scalped him, and tying the scalp to the end of a spear, they held it up in view of the Cherokees. This boy was the only son of one of the Cherokee warriors, and when this warrior beheld the scalp of his murdered boy, he was frantic with rage. His eyes flashed fire, and without a moment's hesitation, he threw off his apparel and seized a knife in one hand and a tomahawk in the other. The chief, who noticed this, said to him, "What are you going to do?" The man said, "Die with my brave boy. Die slaying the cowardly thieves who have killed the only one that was left to me of all of my kindred." He rushed, solitary and alone, upon the 200 Tewakana warriors. His onset was so sudden and unexpected that he succeeded in killing and wounding several before he was killed himself. The Cherokees, having lost 2 men and the boy before mentioned, retreated to a cedar brake, remaining there until night, when they crossed the river and traveled down it for a mile or 2. They then turned the river, which was quite low, and waded up it 6 or 7 miles, thus effectually hiding their trail from the Wacos and Tewacanas. Although they failed to recapture their horses, as they had anticipated doing, they carried back with them to their villages on Red River 55 scalps taken from the heads of Wacos slain in the battle. Hey, y'all, just want to say thank you for tuning in to our first edition of HOKC Side Stories. I hope you enjoyed it. There's just some of this stuff that I think is too cool not to share, If you want to get your own copy of Indian Depredations in Texas, which I highly recommend, I'm going to include the link to purchase down in the comments, descriptions, whatever you call it, down below. And be sure to stay tuned for our regularly scheduled episodes. This won't affect the release schedule at all. That's just some bonus content I hope you all enjoy. We got some stuff on Quanah Parker coming up and Randall McKenzie. What else? Some stuff on the Apache. Just too much for me to even think of right now. But yeah, glad you tuned in. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see y'all soon on History at the OK Corral, home of history's greatest shootouts and showdowns.